Welcome to another episode of The Second Coming. So excited for you to join us here today. I'm your host, Jason Keaton. I'm here with Brother T. Brother T,
Hey,
look at us.
I know, man.
we just sat down and looks like we're twinning today.
I know, man. I got the memo. So
Yeah, I feel like I must be vibing right if I'm dressing like Brother T. So nice,
Yeah,
beautiful.
funny. Yeah, it was,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. How
good
was
for a
your
laugh,
week?
right?
Yeah. How was your week?
It's been great. You know, we're traveling and just got back from Ohio, and then I'm going to be in Tennessee for a little while here for the next weekend or so, and then I'm heading out to Virginia to see some loved ones there. So, kind of on the road a little bit, and then I think after that I don't know. I'm thinking about heading back down to Florida maybe a little bit for the winter. You know,
Nice.
so we'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
Nice.
But Spirit's driving the bus. You know, Spirit's in the, my soul's in the driver's seat. So I don't know yet where I'm going to be required to go, but I'm just happy to be there.
Right. I have a spiritual co-host here today. I'll introduce. He's just Bodie. Bodie is he's my spiritual co-host here today.
Man, I love that dog. He's a great dog.
Loving on me. So he's just gonna. I guess he's just gonna lay here today. So, but Brother T, I'm gonna pose today's question for us, and I want you to enlighten us with the question is, what is the difference between wisdom and knowing?
Excellent question. Thanks for the question. Okay, we're going to jump right in. But before we begin our conversation, let's connect with Spirit so we can get some wisdom and guidance. Okay? Let's take a good deep breath. So the question is, what is the difference between wisdom and knowing? Well, the world has convinced us that we can improve our situation by an ever-increasing intelligence, wisdom, if you will. And it's a construct of the egoic mind. But Jesus tells us that the ego cannot learn anything. But we've got all this information. I mean, we're storing petabytes of data, whatever, we're storing all this information, and now we got all these supercomputers, and, it looks like we're going to solve all the problems of the world. No, the ego cannot solve problems. It can only reshuffle the deck and make it look like it's doing something different, maybe fixing something, moving towards solutions, moving towards fixing things. We have not changed anything in thousands of years here. Humanity has not changed anything, not in its ability to realize what it is, who it is. It doesn't understand God. It doesn't understand love. Love as an example, egoic love, the human love, is conditional. It's made up, and everyone has their own conditions around which they think love can be participated in or should be, resisted. It should look a certain way or shouldn't look a certain way. Shoulds and shouldn'ts, right? If this, then that, all those constructs. And there's no wisdom in it because if we just keep reshuffling the deck, but the deck doesn't change. The cards are the same. Seek but do not find. That's the entire construct of the egoic thought system of fear. That's the default operating system of humanity when we come into an incarnation here. Knowing, however, is of God. Now, let's imagine that you're God's child, and God did not create you to be a thinker. Oh, well, let me think about that. See, the ego is a false artificial intelligence, and it's a thinking self. And God didn't create it. We created it ourselves. It's a little sliver of the mind that God has given us to operate with, so to speak, right? And it's not the body mind, if you will, is the process that we look to, and we believe that is what we are. That's where all the thinking happens. All the wisdom is stored there, so to speak, the choices that we make, etc. But imagine having a connection or beginning to realize your true self and become expressing as your true self, where there is never any doubt. There is only certainty, because you have a knowing of all that is. You know everything that has ever been created and every imagination that has ever been imagined. And it's all available to you forever and ever. And you're not thinking through situations. You're joined with the mind of knowing. That would be the mind of God. Father, thy will be done. Father, thy will be mine. When we're saying those things, what we're saying is, I'm setting aside my thinking self, my small-minded, egoic mind, and I'm going to be joined with the mind of all-knowing. So the difference between wisdom, which might be an expression of the egoic mind that says, I've learned something and this is going to help me in the future, looking to the past to predict the future or manage a future, or I am joined with my higher self, and my higher self, there's nothing to fix. There's no future. There is only now. Even the construct of time is a construct. It's not really our reality. So things get really wonky here, Jason, because I started calling you Jordan. Jason, because the egoic mind, with all of its quote unquote wisdom, cannot understand God. It can't even understand love, because the love of God is unconditional. And that sounds ridiculous to the egoic construct. So I've even heard people say, I don't want to know about God. I don't want to know about love. It's because the God that they have imagined is made up in their own image. That's what our organized religions have taught us, that God is made up in our image. They say we're made in God's image, but what they're really teaching is that God is vengeful, wrathful, jealous, suspicious, vicious. The list goes on. Those are human attributes of a separated mind, a small, unknowing, insane construct of a thinking self. That's not God. God is love, and the love of God is unconditional. So that's just one small thing that we can look to and really kind of start helping ourselves to see, wait a minute, I have a choice. I can either listen to that thinking self, and if you're trying to figure out what it's thinking, just turn on the news, or don't turn on the news, better advice. And, and then say, wait a minute, I'm going to turn within and I'm going to ask, are you there? And I'm going to be present to my higher self. I'm going to listen and allow that self to help me know myself. Eventually, you have to realize that is the real you. The artificial intelligence can be set aside, can be turned off, can be unplugged, or moved into the back seat, as it were, and let the soul be in the driver's seat of your life. And then knowing, absolute certainty, is who you are, because that is you, right? So more and more, the egoic construct begins to fade, a little bit like a dream. Last night you had a dream, but after a few minutes of waking up, you dismissed it and probably forgotten all about it by now. The point is that this knowing self is your true self. The small self, the egoic mind of fear, is trying to overcome fear by being wise enough to avoid trepidation, to avoid conflict, to avoid disaster. But it can't, because its entire construct is an illusion. There's nothing to fear. Our strength lies in our defenselessness, but we build armies to defend ourselves from who? Ourselves, because who's out there? Just more extensions of God, more of us, more of God. So we're literally trying to protect ourselves from God. It sounds ridiculous. But if we make God up in our own image, it's not so ridiculous. But once we do realize that God is only love, and that love is unconditional and non-judgmental, then why would we be defending ourselves against God? And why would we fear God? So we can go in lots of different directions here, Jason, but I'm going to throw it back to you and just see if there's anything that comes up for you in this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brother T. So, when we talk about separation, and I'm gonna jump forward, if we can just kind of visualize decades into the future. Right now there's so much separation and war caused by the different dogmas out there, and especially if you just think of the Gaza area and stuff, and the war and the death and the hatred that's going on in some parts of the world over religion. What do you feel, Brother T, is the role of religion bouncing forward as the second coming continues, the planet continues to awaken, the second coming fills more human bodies with spirit? What is the role of religion going forward?
Well, we all went to kindergarten, didn't we? No, I didn't. Kindergarten didn't exist when I first started going to school. that sounds crazy, right? So we had to go through the first grade to get to second grade, get to third grade, get to fourth grade, fifth grade. Eventually got to junior high, and eventually got to high school. And some people continued high school, and they call it college, but it's just a continuation of high school. And each grade was a stepping stone, right? Religions are stepping stones. Eventually, you transcend religion, especially because most religions have been manipulated to satisfy the needs of the fearful, separated self. We say, okay, if war and separation, causes us to do these things, what caused the war and separation? Well, separation. It's a game of separation. It's a game. It's not even it's an illusory construct of being separate from God and being separate from each other, being separate from everything. And that's illusory because God created us in oneness. And we can't use this little sliver of intelligence, this thinking mind, to understand God. The only thing we can really do is to say, get thee behind me, put the soul in the driver's seat, and quit listening to the mind of fear, and really hone your ability to tune into the mind of certainty. That would be the Holy Spirit in the Bible. That's also your true self, capital T, capital S, true self. It is your soul. That is what God created you to be. You are a soul. You're not a human being, and you're not an ego. You're not a personality. Those are temporary constructs while your soul came into this incarnation. That's what is reincarnating as you. And as it matures and as you allow it, eventually, as it becomes wiser and stronger from your incarnations here in human form, it eventually starts catching your attention and you start giving it more awareness, and eventually it begins to be expressing as you. You return to being your true self. Again, not unlike going to sleep at night, and that is an imaginary self that is completely unaware that you're safe at home in bed. It doesn't even know all that your life is. And when you wake up, you remember this life, right? What you were going to do today and who you're going to do it with, and where you were asleep at last night. But that sleeping self just kind of collapses, it just disappears. That sleeping self at night, that experience that you're having is a symbol of the experience you're having right now, an imaginary construct of an existence. But when that self begins to be seen for what it is, just like when you wake up in the morning from your sleeping experience, you start to see that sleeping self for what it is, a temporary idea of your reality. And so when you begin to allow the soul to inform your being, well, then a knowing becomes a part of your existence, and all of the false constructs of the ego it's almost like a toy that you put away when you were a child. Nobody had to tell you to put it away. You just started realizing it had a purpose for a while, but then eventually you just didn't need it anymore, and you set it aside. And that's really, really what happens when we become self-realized. We kind of set this egoic construct of ourself aside. This is a pretty deep conversation. I don't want to get too far afield, but it's worth looking at and considering. And there's lots of great information to help you that's helped me, for all of us to be informed about what's really going on. And we have to actually do a little work for that, Jason. We need to spend a little time learning and educating ourselves from the teachings of Jesus. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about being a part of here at True Thought. And we get to talk about it here a little bit on our podcast called The Second Coming.
Thank you, Brother T. Thank you. And you're right. I mean, we sit here once a week and we talk a little bit about it, but personally, we have to go and we have to dig into resources and do some work ourselves to take that step forward and to be able to have spiritual conversations with friends and family, and have some knowledge and knowing when we discuss things. So thank you so much, Brother T.
When you wake up from the dream, the sleeping self in the morning, you have a knowing. You look at that and go, that's okay, that wasn't me. That wasn't all of me. It was me, but it really wasn't me. I mean, that self didn't even know that I was safe at home in bed, but I knew what that self was doing. I mean, I remember my dream for at least a few moments when I wake up, sometimes. So there's a knowing that happens when you transition from one dimensional experience to another, right? Nobody has to teach that to you. Your ego isn't learning something. You just have a realization and you have a knowing that sleeping self really wasn't all of what you were. That's really what we're talking about on a different level. And so when you allow the soul then to inform your experience and to inform you of who you really are, you begin to experience a knowing of reality. It's called the vision of Christ. And you see innocence everywhere. You see your brothers and sisters as a part of yourself. You see their perfect innocence. Judgment itself just goes away. And you start to literally fall in love and see miracles of love and transformation everywhere you look. And there was a song out called Everything is Holy Now. We wake up to a holiness of all of creation, and we realize we were always in the kingdom of heaven. We've always been experiencing heaven on earth all along. We were just imagining it to be something other than that. And in that imagination, we manifested those experiences as our experience.
I love that. I love that, Brother T. And if we can, we'll try and put the link to that song down here. I'd love to hear that song, and I'm unaware of it. So, that'll be a little bit of my research.
Yeah, we'll put it down in the comment section for people.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'm going to close with a fun question for everybody. Brother T, who is your spiritual superhero?
My superhero. My spiritual superhero is Jesus.
Yeah, I could have guessed that one. He's a good dude.
He is. He's my brother, and he ain't heavy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's done so much for all of us. It's unimaginable, how many millions and millions and millions of people pray to Jesus every day. I mean, there's billions of people on the planet, billions, and millions of people pray to Jesus every day. A lot of it, millions of times people, that are in battle, pray to Jesus to help me defeat this other person, It's like, okay, help my right hand beat up my left hand. That's kind of crazy. But your brothers and sisters are a part of you. They are you. And we quit seeing separation in the world, we begin to see unity. And Jesus is the foremost teacher and has set the example for others in a way that nobody else, in my humble experience, has compared to. And I do love other teachers. I'm not saying I love the guides, McKesseldeck from, Paul Selig's work. And there's so much good stuff out there. And it all brings us into the same teaching, Jason. I mean, it all is absolutely coherent and resonates with the same vibration of love that Jesus is bringing forth. But short answer is Jesus, he's my brother, and he ain't heavy. He lifts me up.
Well, thank you, Brother T. Thank all of you for joining us this week. We love and appreciate you joining with us with this energy and taking this energy and spreading it out to everyone else. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Brother T.
Absolutely.
Thank all of you. And we will see you next week in another episode of The Second Coming.